The reproductive rights, India's Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act and Surrogacy Act. Just write it. I am just giving the sociological angle. I'm not going in detail in the aspect of GS part. Now, so bodily autonomy and reproductive rights must be viewed from three lenses. First lens can be legal, second is medical, third is social. So only when women and non-binary pregnant people enjoy absolute autonomy over their own body by these parameters can one claim that India is showing the way for the modernization. Like abortion in India are very complex topic. The skewed sex ratio is a proof that unsafe abortion and the female feticides are rampant present in India. Now let's move to the sociological analysis of Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act. So it uses the word woman, thereby leaving out pregnant transgender and non-binary person who are biologically capable of bearing child or children. So it forces them, it forces transgender and other non-binary persons to identify themselves in a gender binary, ignoring their gender identity. So it does not give the pregnant person complete autonomy in ending the pregnancy, instead making them go through various systemic barriers. One case can be said that like, or in the aspect of social privilege or class privilege. So abortion facilities in private medical center are very expensive, available only for those who have the resources. Not all the public healthcare centers, especially in rural India, provides abortion facilities. This is related to regional disparity. In case of rural and urban areas, access to healthcare resources. Another related to class, who can afford, who cannot, rich and poor. Another related to binary of gender like male, female, exclusion of transgender and non-binary person who can bear children. Third can be social stigma leading to unsafe abortion. Social stigma leading to unsafe abortion. So most unmarried women end up resorting to unsafe abortion in very illegal clinics or at homes. So this is the sociological analysis of Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act. Now let's move to the sociological angle in Surrogacy Regulation Act 2021. This act, first just write it, this act is exclusionary in nature, disregarding the privacy, and also exploits women's reproductive labor. So only a heterosexual married couple with certain preconditions can be the intending parents, and it strips the reproductive autonomy of LGBTQ plus persons and single, divorced, and widowed intending parents. So it can be seen as a violation of the fundamental right to equality. Another issue is altruistic surrogacy denies women compensation for their reproductive labor and is seen as a direct manifestation of the patriarchal mindset. Fourth is like the act requires the intending couple to declare their infertility and reveal the identity of surrogate. And both of this violates the right to privacy. And the current reproductive rights regulatory framework falls short in guaranteeing bodily privacy. Now let's move to the next topic, that is sologamy. Within gender itself, just cover it, a small topic, sologamy. Sologamy. So sologamy is an act of marrying oneself in a public ceremony. This is the definition. And it is also referred to as self-marriage or autogamy. Also refers to as autogamy or self-marriage. So such marriage has no legal sanction or status. So the symbolic ceremony is used by many as the act to emphasize that their self-love and independence. So sologamy is an act of marrying oneself. And what are the recent trends? Like there are no rules or social norms. They can be the sologamy can be similar to the traditional two people wedding or not. Since the trend pickup, service provider to have come up in different corner of the world to help their self-marrying clients. Like Marry Yourself in Canada, offer consulting and wedding photography. There was a site named marriedme.com in San Francisco. They offer sologamy ceremony kit, including wedding band and vows. So, sociologists define marriage as a socially supported union involving two or more adult individual, in what is regarded as a stable, enduring arrangement, typically based at least in part of or in part on a sexual bond of some kind. And what are the social functions of marriage? What are the social functions of marriage? So marriage has several social functions that are very important within a society and culture where the marriage takes place. So like an American sociologist, Talcott Parsons, outlined a theory of roles within a marriage and household, where wives or mothers are generally regarded as expressive role of a caregiver, socialization, and emotional need of others in the family. If she hold the most power in the marriage, then they call it matriarchies. Second, like husband and father, they are generally providing task role of earning money to support the family. If he holds the most power in the marriage, then it is called patriarchies. This was the function provided by marriage according to Talcott Parsons. Now, sologamy in rise around the world is seen as a challenge to the institution of marriage and the complex power division between the couples. Now, what are the points related to sologamy? Just sociologists point out that sologamy has appeared at a time when in the West, the percentage of unmarried or divorced or separated people has been rising. So as one would expect, the typical client are urban, affluent, and the educated women. Interestingly, the group includes even women who are already married. And sologamy generally, I'm saying, not exclusively, generally seen amongst the females. So they try to rejecting the institution of marriage. So many people may choose to remain single, rejecting the institution of marriage, as it might mean surrendering one's independence or accepting an unequal conjugal relationships. But there are others who want to remain single without rejecting the concept of marriage and the rituals and the sentiments attached to it. So this other category or the later category of people generally go for sologamy. And this was generally results from increasing trends towards individualism. So sologamy stems from a growing trend toward singlehood, especially in West. And it represents new form of self-love and self-commitment. And this is the concept of generally of temporal ownership. So self-marriage offers single women a venue by which they can claim to take control over their present and future. This is regard to sologamy. Now let's move to the next topic, that is unpaid work. Unpaid work, a woman's responsibility. So unpaid work, just write unpaid work or care economy, concept of care economy or unpaid work. Unpaid work. So as you all know, the sexual division of labor or gendered role and social norms, the burden of unpaid work both in India and globally is disproportionately shared by women. Generally, it is shared by women. So, what constitutes unpaid work? And how it is distributed in the present society? So, the term unpaid work, as given by International Labour Organization, and it is defined as unpaid work is the non-remunerated work carried out to sustain the well-being and maintenance of other individuals in the household or the community, and it includes both direct and indirect care. What actually it constitute? It constitute care work. First, care work. Example of it like looking after children, elderly, sick, disabled, or other adults. Second, service activities for the maintenance and care of household, like collection of free goods such as fuel, fodder, and water, etc., etc., for their consumption, cooking, cleaning, shopping, etc. Third is voluntary community service activity, like serving in a community kitchen, beach cleaning, etc. Fourth is activities involving production for own consumption. Example like agricultural products, milling, weaving, etc. Last is voluntary work for production of goods and services. Voluntary work. So family helpers in the family farm or enterprise. So unpaid work can be categorized into following major divisions, like skewed distribution of unpaid work. What are the global trends? So a report published by International Labour Organization in 2018 that shows that globally women perform 3/4 of unpaid care work. So in no country in the world do men and women provide an equal share of unpaid care work. And what actually the trend in India? So a survey conducted by National Statistical Office revealed that 91.8% of women, 91.8% of the women in India aged between 15 to 59 participated in unpaid domestic work for the household member. And this was the data related to 2019. And whereas, as compared to men, this percentage was 20%. So this is the skewed distribution of unpaid work. Now, what can be the reason for the women perform majority of unpaid work in our society? First reason can be cited to be like patriarchal norms. It can be the consequences of rigid patriarchal norms and gendered stereotypes, like men as breadwinner, women as a caregiver. Second is limited ability of women to participate in paid work. So limited ability, not biologically, but because of lack of skill. While lack of skill, because of lack of access to the education. So data suggests that women with no technical education have higher probability to be engaged in unpaid domestic work compared to the women having any form of technical educations. And discriminatory social institutions prevent women from attaining necessary educational qualification to participate in paid labor. So this can be the second reason. Third, lack of alternate care institutions or infrastructures. So women are engaged in unpaid activities not by choice. Rather, they are constrained because institutions have failed to create affordable alternatives, such as elderly care homes, child care facilities, stable water supply, etc., etc. Fourth is financial constraint. So outsourcing unpaid care activities such as cooking, cleaning, or fetching water is not an affordable, a realistic option for most of the women in India. Fifth is structural transformation. So the structural transformation and automation of agriculture or mechanization of agriculture have led to the mechanization of work. And this has pushed women to exit from farm activities, especially from the middle and large size of land holding, and to engage in unpaid activities. And the last can be cited in like increase in household income. So women in household with a higher income generally participate in child rearing activities to provide better opportunities to the upcoming generations. Now, what are the implications for women for this skewed distribution of unpaid work and how it is impacting women? First, it is providing barrier to women's labor force participation. For instance, only 21.88% of women aged between 15 to 59 year were engaged in paid work in comparison to nearly 70.8% of the men. And the immense burden of unpaid work prevent women from actively pursuing further education, employment opportunities, raising their skill level, and which limits their ability to participate in paid work. Second is like occupational downgrading and segregation or occupational segregation. So pink collar job. So a struggle for women to reconcile care responsibilities with paid employment can lead to women choosing employment below their skill level. They are generally opt for part-time jobs and they try to balance their career and household work. And it is also leading women to choose sectors that are traditionally associated with their gender roles. Example of it like nurses, domestic help, receptionists. Third can be like discrimination in hiring and pay. Pay in the form of unequal payment in the wages. So the responsibility of unpaid work, especially childcare activities, eventually falls on women, even if they participate in paid work outside their home. And this promotes idea like women are not competent or dedicated workers. And this leads to the discrimination during the recruitment and career advancement opportunities. Next is like increasing hierarchy in gender relation and gender inequalities in the family. So Oxfam India 2019 household care survey found that 1 in the 3 survey respondents thought that it was acceptable to beat a woman for failing to perform care work. Next is detrimental to women empowerment, like underrepresentation of women in decision-making positions. It limits their access to collective action processes and increase vulnerability to environmental and economic changes. I already talked about the climate change and women. Now, what can be the impact of unpaid work on economy and society? So there are various positive and negative impact of unpaid care work on countries' economies as well as individual and societal well-being. What are the positive impact? Subsidization of the market first. So what exactly it means? This is the functionalist perspective of unpaid work. So unpaid work lowers the cost of labor for the market because it provides a reserve army of labor. So the private sector has to pay much less than what it would have paid to maintain the same standard of living of workers. And this raises profits at the macro level, leading to an increase in the amount of capital accumulated by the capitalist. Second is human capital formation. So unpaid work contribute to human capital formation by raising and nurturing children who are the workforce of tomorrow. Third, it supplements government's duties. So unpaid work supplements the goods and services made available through public sector provisioning and also fills the gap in public infrastructure. Like unpaid work includes fetching drinking water from substitute public provisioning of water supply and related infrastructure. Now, what can be the negative impact? Reduced economic gain. So skewed distribution of unpaid work lead to depletion of human capital and a suboptimal use of labor force in the economy. So like in a report, International Monetary Fund, IMF, suggested that if women's participation in the economy was raised to that of the men, then India could grow its GDP by 27%. Second is undervaluation of certain paid work. And the last one is detrimental impact on quality of care. So excessive amount of unpaid care work can result in suboptimal care strategies with detrimental consequences of care recipients such as infant, children, person with disabilities, etc., etc. So for that purpose, like now the question is, should unpaid work be recognized and accounted as an economic activity? So those who want to unpaid work should be recognized generally argue that It ensured the rights of unpaid workers. Second, recognition as a central process in the empowerment, and this empowerment related regarding to women. The recognition of primary occupation of women as genuine work. Third, need of a holistic understanding of labor. So the society needs an inclusive definition of labor. Next point they generally made is like it enhanced the policy efficiency. Now, what can be done to overcome the issue associated with unpaid domestic and care work? So there was one scholar named Dean Elson, Diane Elson. Diane Elson. He had given the concept of 3R approach. 3R approach. First is recognition or recognizing. Second is reducing. Third is redistributing. What actually the recognizing means? The unpaid care work involved bringing an end to an societal's habitual practice of taking it for granted and challenging the social norm and gender stereotypes that undervalue it and making it invisible in policy design and implementation. So, recognition of unpaid care work would end it. The invisible in policy design and implementation. And reducing unpaid care work means shortening the time devoted to such work when it involves primarily by improving infrastructure. And redistributing unpaid care work means changing its distribution between women and men, but also between households and society as a whole. So, at last we can say that the unpaid work is a universal issue that affects women across the globe, regardless of their level of education and income or the level of development of their countries. So inequality in unpaid care work and in the labor force are deeply interrelated. So no substantive progress can be made in achieving gender equality in the labor force until inequality in the unpaid care work are tackled through effective recognition, reduction, and redistribution of unpaid care work between women and men, as well as between families and the state. So state have a role to encourage a more equal distribution of unpaid care work at the family level. And also the strategies to address unpaid care work at the community level are needed to promote effective change in attitude towards unpaid care work. So this is all you have to know about unpaid work or care economy.